Let's see what's on YouTube today. I've got a question for you. This is a 48-volt battery. So what would the voltage of this battery be when it is fully charged? You can pause the video and put your answer in the comments. Is it A, 52 volts, B, 48 volts, C, 54 volts, or D, 46 volts? Oh, come on, that's easy. That's gotta be 48 volts, right? B? The correct answer would be C, 54 volts. Apparently not. You can give yourself a pat on the back if you knew the answer, and if you didn't, that's okay. By the end of this video, you will understand why. And before we get there, I've got a part 2 to that question, which is, if I put this on an e-bike and rode it until the battery shut off and effectively died, what would the voltage be then? I definitely got this one. It is 0 volts. Would it be A, 48 volts? Would it be 12 volts? C, 39 volts? Or D, 0 volts? Once again, you can pause and put your answer in the comments. That one I think is a little bit tougher, but congratulations to anyone who guessed C, 39 volts. Oh, come on, nobody got that. That is just a case. Sometimes they're made out of a combination of metal and plastic. Sometimes they're more primarily plastic. I'm in the process of building a couple of battery boxes out of foam and fiberglass. Let me know if you want to see how to build battery boxes. Odds of me actually building one are pretty much 0, but sure, go ahead, I want to see it. But inside of this, we have a variety of cells. I have printed a couple of dummy cells out so you can just see what the approximate sizes are. This is an 18650, and this is the size of a 21700 cell. This is the older style, if you will, although still very commonly used, and the 21700 is a little bit newer. The name actually denotes the size of the cell itself. 18 is the diameter across, 65 is 65 millimeters in length, and 0 actually stands for the fact that it is round. So a bunch of these are piled up in here to somehow get to 48 volts, and we'll get to how that works in a moment. But first off, I think you need to understand the discharge curve of lithium-ion batteries. Now you might think for a 48-volt battery that you start with 48 volts, and as the battery is used, you have this nice linear line that goes down to 0 volts. But that's not what the discharge curve looks like at all. Really, it's more like 54 volts is fully charged, 48 volts is what we call the nominal voltage, and down lower I'm gonna put 39 volts, which is the cutoff voltage, and way down here we have 0 volts. And really, the discharge curve looks something more like this. It starts at 54 volts, fairly quickly goes down closer to 48, stays close to 48, and then towards the end there is a very rapid decline down to 0. So when you fully charge your bike up to 100%, you're at 54 volts. But for most of your ride, it is somewhere around 48 volts, and that's why they use that as the nominal voltage, because it's kind of the operating voltage where almost everything happens. Now when you get down to here, 39 volts, the battery has a circuit inside that tells it to turn off. And effectively, this is 0% of the capacity. Now technically, you could drain more of the battery out all the way to 0 volts, but the chemistry of lithium-ion cells will not allow you to do that. If you try, your battery is going to be completely dead and will not recharge. Now the individual cells don't go as high as 48 volts. The 18650 lithium-ion cell has a nominal voltage of 3.7. It will charge up to a max of 4.2 volts, and realistically you'll drain them down to about 3 volts per cell before they should be turned off. So how do you get that up to dozens of cells inside something like this up to 48 volts? Well, there's 2 ways to wire batteries. You can either have them wired in series or in parallel. Let me grab a small battery that's designed for a radio-controlled airplane as an example. This one says 3S 11.1 volts, 1300 milliamp hours, or 14.4 watt hours. And you can see it says right here, charge as 3 cells, 11.1 volts. So this, although it's not in this format of an 18650 round cells, these are pouch cells, this is also a lithium ion technology. When they're in pouches, they typically refer to them as lithium polymer, but the underlying chemistry is the same. By wiring 3 of these in a row, basically the positive side of one cell to the negative side of the next cell, and so on, and chaining them together, we increase the voltage. So 2 cells is going to be double the voltage, 3 will be 3 times the voltage, and so on. If you wire them in parallel, the voltage stays the same, but you double the capacity, or in e-bike terms, you would double your range. So to get something like this all the way up to 48 volts, we are using 13 of these cells in series, and then some number of them also in parallel to get the capacity up to a usable number. If we jump up to a 52 volt battery, then we're going to have 14 cells in series. And if you jump up to a 72 volt battery, then you're gonna have more like 20 cells in series. A battery may say 10S12P. That tells you that there's 10 cells in series and 12 sets of those cells in parallel. Now it'd be really cool if I could show you, electrically speaking, what that looks like, and I can. All 3 of these batteries have a BMS built in. That is a battery management system. It's a circuit that manages the cells and keeps them balanced and operating at the same voltage. And normally you can't see what they're doing, they're just doing their job behind the scenes. What is that contraption in the corner? And if you're wondering what that thing is, don't worry, I'll come back to that later. Here I've got the Samurai. This is a bike that's capable of about 6,000 watts at peak power, and I have a total of 4 kilowatt hours of battery in here. This right here is a battery that is 10 cells in series, 12 in parallel, and I'll put a picture on screen of what this looks like on the inside. Not only do these 2 batteries have a small screen so I can push a button and see what the current charge percentage and voltage is, as well as the temperature, but there is a Bluetooth BMS in this, so I can check the battery with my phone and see what's actually going on with the batteries in real time. I can see right there, the voltage is 41.4. Currently, the current is 0. We're not drawing any power from it at all. Here I can see this is actually this battery right here in real time. These are the 10 sets of cells in series. I can see the voltage of each one. They're at 4.138, 4.137. The highest is at 4.14. Now my question is, why don't we have that kind of BMS on all e-bike batteries? So they're all very, very closely matched, and that's a good thing. Something's not adding up on his video here, because that's like a 36 volt battery. There's no way he's running 6,000 watts through that. For those astute viewers who have done the math already, you might realize 10 cells in series, 3.7 volts per cell. That's only 37 volts, so basically what we would call a 36 volt nominal battery. It doesn't seem like a lot of voltage for something with as much power as this has, which is why I have 2 batteries, and I have again put these 2 in series, so I'm actually running a total of 72 volts to the motor controller. I did it that way so I can double up. I can pull these batteries out of this battery box that I've made, put them into my Velomobile that I'm still working on, and use the batteries between both. Having 2 separate batteries is a little bit easier to manage weight-wise, and by having the nominal voltage at 36, it's easier to set up solar charging for them than it is at 72 volts. Back to the workbench, one other thing I want to point out is that the size of the cell doesn't change the voltage. In case that wasn't clear, being an 18650 is obviously smaller than a 21700, but it's the chemistry that determines the voltage of each cell. You could make this massive and much, much bigger, which they certainly do, but the voltage would remain the same, only the capacity would get bigger. So now that you know how the voltages add up, what about the capacity? Is there a way to test your battery and make sure that you're getting that range that it should get within those specific voltages? And most bikes don't have that capability built in. Some do, but very, very few. Most chargers don't have that built in. The cycle satiator is one that can track the amp hours put back into a battery, but it's about $300. I have one and they're great, but I understand most people don't want to spend that much money. If you're a DIY person and you want to test your own batteries, turns out you can actually do it very, very cheaply with one of these. In case it wasn't obvious, this video is sponsored by Valencia, and they make theater chairs. I don't think I've ever felt so spoiled while watching YouTube. I can't tell you how many times people have come into my shop and told me that they see me on their TV in their living room all the time, which is one, flattering to hear, of course, but also awesome that people are watching YouTube not just on their mobile phones or on their computers, but on the big screen. So if you want to watch YouTube in the most possible comfort, perhaps you should get one of these. Comfort is king when it comes to electric bikes. Bikes that sell the most are often the most comfortable to ride. It only makes sense that chairs that are the most comfortable to sit in should also be the ones you buy. This is the Oslo luxury model, which comes with Italian Napa leather. I don't know what the difference is between Italian and American cows, but apparently it's something good because it feels really nice.
Hours and hours on a single piece, passing it from hand to hand again and again and again. It's a question of disciplina.
It has French double diamond stitching throughout, power lumbar, a powered headrest. Nobody really needs LEDs or underglow effects on their chair, except when it's a theater chair and you expect to have, of course, all of the lights turned down, in which case these things look awesome. The LED lights can change, and there are a total of 7 different colors. I'm partial to the blue myself. The power doesn't stop there. If your phone is running low, of course, you can pull out a cord from the giant luxurious storage and plug it in. It has both USB-A and USB-C ports. Charging right up. This cord is really long. And of course, the chair has a memory function as well. So if you find a perfect spot where it's extremely comfortable, you can get right back to it every single time. My normal recliner chair does not have any cup holders. Well, here that is solved. We have a stainless steel cup holder on each side. And in addition to that, if for some reason that is not enough, there are these right here. I was trying to figure out what these were at first. I was like, is this a button? These are attachments for additional accessories. They have one that goes here for a wine glass, or you can put one over here for a tray table if you want to have meals. They have an attachment for a popcorn bowl, or if you want to be productive while you're in your chair, they even have a stand for an iPad. And finally, I gotta talk about the storage on this thing. Obviously, I pulled a couple of things out from the side here, but you wouldn't believe how deep this is. This is going to fit every single remote you have. I mean, look at this. This is a full-size keyboard. Fits in there with room to spare. It's got enough room that on this side, I have a massage gun for those days when I've gone for a nice long bike ride. You can fit all of your game controllers in. Oh, look, there's that GoPro I was looking for. And then I'm not done yet. I'm still digging down there. Here, there's a blanket underneath all of that stuff. I mean, talk about battery capacity. I think I could probably fit like 6 kilowatt hours of lithium battery in this thing. That's pretty deep. In fact, Valencia, if you ever want to send me another one of these chairs, I promise I will fill these armrests full of batteries. I will put wheels on this thing and I will drive it down the road. Comment if you'd like to see that, because I really would like another chair. We can put all this stuff back now. And that one, the remote. All right, let's lean it all the way back and finish up this video. Now the entire box here I built for testing battery capacity, and this does the test when the battery is discharging, so the exact opposite of the cycle satiator. So the good thing is I can actually use this in conjunction with that. This screen will tell me how many watt hours came out of the battery, and then if I plug in the cycle satiator to charge it back up, I can do the same thing in reverse. So I have two numbers. They should always match, but that'll give me a good idea if a battery is still working as it should. So I have my battery plugged in and it's turned on. All I gotta do now is flip the on switch, and on this screen we see the current voltage of the battery is 44.4 and change. It's changing because this is actively drawing power. It's at 8.7 amps or 386 watts. And so far, because I've actually been testing this battery for a while, I've pulled out, looks like we're coming up on 400 watt hours. So this little display is pulling information from this circuit. And it may look complicated, but it really isn't. It's very simple. You really only need two things. You don't even need this switch right here. You need a source of power, your battery, which I have plugged in the back right here. You need a load, something to draw power. In this case, I'm using these two resistors. The reason I went with resistors instead of a motor or a light bulb or something else is because the current or the wattage that's being drawn is determined by the calculation of the battery voltage and the resistance of the two resistors. This display and this shunt, which are measuring the amount of power going through the circuit, one, are very cheap. It only cost, I think, $16 for this on Amazon, which is pretty awesome, but it can take a really wide range of voltage. I think at the low end, it was 6.5 volts all the way up to 100 volts. So I could plug in a 12 volt battery and this circuit will work. I can plug in a 72 volt battery. The higher the voltage is, the more power it's gonna draw, but I wanted it that way. Otherwise, this would take forever to drain down a large battery and do the test. So I'm not creating any light or any motion. What I am generating from these two resistors, however, is heat. If I put my hand above this right here, I can actually feel the heat coming out. That is one thing I'm going to change on this, is I am gonna add some fans on the top right here, because at some of the bigger battery voltages, those do get pretty toasty. But back to the circuit, I've got a 48 volt battery. The positive side is going to the resistor on the negative side of the load, which is resistors for me. Then we go down to the shunt device, and then there's some connectors that go off into this magic little black box that tell us all of the information we want to know. If I want to turn this whole thing off, I can just flip this switch and it stops. The great thing about this is it actually stores in its memory where it was. So I can run this for a little while, because batteries, I think, should be monitored. And when I come back to it, I can flip this back on and it picks right up where it left off. So we're at 422 watt hours and it'll just keep going. So I would say one of these switches, if you want to add a switch into the circuit, you can probably get for about $5. The display, again, I think it was $15.99 on Amazon, some wiring, and then all you need in addition to that is a load of some sort. Now these resistors weren't the cheapest. You could pick a different item if you know that you're only going to test, say, 48 volt batteries, but I knew I was going to need a really wide range and the resistors made more sense. You could build a circuit like this for maybe 20, 30 bucks, which I think is really reasonable. Of course, the colored acrylic is optional if you want it to look fancy. So now I can test this rather old used battery to see if it has the capacity it should. I can test batteries that are brand new when they come from overseas, make sure that they meet specifications. This is one of those. I just got a small handful of 72 volt, 32 amp hour batteries. That's 2.3 kilowatt hours. I mean, look at this big beefy plug for the discharge port. So if you need a 72 volt battery for a high powered application up to about 3,000 watts, I've got a few of those in stock. You can check those out at area13ebikes.com. If you have more questions about batteries, please make sure to ask them in the comments section. I will answer every single question about batteries that is posted within the first 24 hours the video goes live. Also, of course, if you want to check out Valencia theater seating, I'll put a link to these chairs in the description, as well as links to all of the components I showed in this video. If you want to know more about batteries, how to maintain them, how to keep them from exploding, but also just keep them lasting a good long time, make sure to go check out this video right here.